In this video today, we are going to explore one of the most important agricultural inventions of the 20th century, the Ferguson system, better known as the 3-point hitch or the 3-point linkage. It may not sound exciting at first, but this invention completely transformed farming around the world. Before the Ferguson system, tractors were powerful machines, but they weren't always safe and efficient. Farmers struggled with equipment that was difficult to control, dangerous to operate, and often caused unnecessary wear on machinery and soil. The man who changed all that, of course, was Harry Ferguson, an Irish engineer, inventor, and entrepreneur whose ideas helped shape modern agriculture. Today we discuss briefly who Harry Ferguson was, the problems that farmers faced before his invention, how the 3-point hitch or the 3-point linkage works, and why the Ferguson system remains one of the most influential farming innovations ever created. Well, hello everybody, and you're very welcome back to the channel. And yes, in this video today, we are going to discuss the famous Ferguson system, why it was invented, its obvious benefits, and its development throughout the years. A little bit about how it worked, and of course, a little bit about Harry Ferguson himself. Now, I do have a full video on Harry Ferguson, the life of Harry Ferguson. If you want to look back through the back catalogue, it's a full video on Harry Ferguson there. But today, yes, we're talking about the actual Ferguson system itself, and of course that 3-point linkage and its obvious advantages. Now, when you look at farming down through the years, from the invention of the plough way back, was one of the first huge, modern inventions that revolutionised farming. When you look at the invention of the plough, obviously the traction engine that took over from the horse, the diesel engine, the tractor itself, pneumatic tires, the 3-point linkage, and then of course into modern, innovations and inventions, like GPS and stuff like that, that we have today that have revolutionized farming to make it a lot more efficient and, I won't say more profitable these days, but it helps to make it a little bit more profitable and just to help curb waste, I suppose, stuff like that. Every little penny helps, everything helps these days. Looking at the 3-point linkage itself, obviously everyone takes it for granted now. It's just something that's automatically on the back of a tractor. Not everybody understands exactly how it works. To some people, you just put an implement on and it lifts it up and down. But there's a lot more technicality around the 3-point linkage than just that. From its geometry and how it's actually set up, from the angles of the top link to aid traction, from the angles of the lower links, loads of different ways that can help the tractor and the implement work together as one. And of course then the hydraulic component of it as well, the draft system, the pressure control system, and all the differences that it makes, how it works, and the complexities behind it. I am going to do a second part in this video where I will have a tractor. I'll have 1 or 2 tractors and I'll put them side by side, and we'll talk about the different systems on each tractor, maybe one with top link sensing like the little 165 that we have at home, that is basically the same system that was on the original Ferguson system, and then maybe look at something on the John Deere maybe at home that has lower link sensing and a little bit of differences between the two of them. So there will be a second video coming out sometime in the future as a second part of this video. But today we're just going to have a brief introduction into the Ferguson system itself and its advantages, why it was set up, why it was invented, and how it has helped farmers down through the years. So we'll start off. Who was Harry Ferguson? Of course, Harry Ferguson was born in County Down in Ireland in 1884. And from a young age, he showed a strong interest in engineering and machinery. Unlike many inventors who worked mainly in laboratories, Ferguson spent much of his time around farms. He understood firsthand the challenges that farmers faced every day. He was also fascinated by technology. In fact, he became involved in aviation and was one of the first people in Ireland to build and fly his own aeroplane. That inventive mindset eventually led him towards agricultural engineering. Ferguson believed that farming could be made more efficient through better machinery design. As tractors became more common in the early 20th century, Ferguson noticed a major problem. Tractors had power, but the methods used to attach implements like ploughs and cultivators were outdated. And when you look at when the tractor was invented first and the traction engine, the steam engine, the first of those tractors, All they done was replaced the horse. The implements never changed, they never modernized. So instead of attaching it onto a horse or a team of horses, you attached it onto the back of a tractor and you just pulled it up and down the field. It was just a basic draft system. The implement was left to do its own work. The machine, the traction engine, or the early tractors just pulled it up and down the field with little or no symbiotic relationship between the two. And that's where the Ferguson system comes into its own, where it was developed to mate the two units as one. So yeah, instead of treating the tractor and implement as a single working unit, farmers often pulled equipment behind the tractor using simple drawbars. This approach created numerous problems. So to understand Ferguson's contribution, we need to understand what farming looked like before the 3-point hitch. Most implements were simply dragged behind the tractor. This meant that the tractor and the implement functioned almost independently. As a result, farmers had limited control over their equipment. Implements could bounce or dig in too deeply or fail to maintain a consistent working depth. There was also a serious safety concern. If a plough struck a buried rock or a root, the resistance could cause the front of the tractor to lift suddenly. In some cases, tractors could flip backwards, resulting in severe injuries or fatalities, which often did happen back in the early 1900s. The lack of integration between tractor and implement also reduced efficiency. Farmers spent more time making adjustments and less time completing fieldwork. Ferguson believed that there had to be a better way. So when you take the modern, I won't say the modern, but the ploughs at the time, the draft ploughs or the draft harrows, to make the implement bigger, obviously, the machine had to get bigger, and because there were only rear-wheel drive at the time, there was no real four-wheel drive systems, they had to add extra weight to the front of them to keep them on the ground. That was the biggest issue with just a draft system. Once, the torque required to pull that implement through the ground became too great for that machine. There wasn't enough ballast or weight or a transfer of weight to the front of the machine, and it would simply just tip back over. As a result, tractors became, exponentially too big for the implement that they were pulling. And you've seen these monstrosities driving around fields, pulling, something no more than a 6-meter wide cultivator. And that was where the huge problem lay, because it obviously added to cost, added to, complexity of the machine. It added to soil compaction. There was a whole host of reasons why, it just wasn't feasible to carry on making implements bigger and the machine, the tractor itself, exponentially bigger. So after years of experimentation and engineering work, Ferguson developed what became known as the Ferguson System. At the heart of the system was a 3-point attachment method that connected implements directly to the tractor. Instead of pulling equipment loosely behind the machine, the implement became part of the machine itself. The system used 3 connecting points, 2 lower links, and then 1 top link. Together, these 3 points formed a stable triangle structure. The arrangement allowed the implement to move with the tractor while maintaining excellent control and balance. The innovation didn't stop there, however. Ferguson also introduced hydraulic controls that allowed operators to raise and lower the implements with ease. This combination of mechanical design and hydraulic technology made farming safer, faster, and of course, more efficient. So let's break down how the 3-point system actually works. The 2 lower links support most of the implement's weight. These links connect the implement securely to the rear of the tractor. The top link provides stability and helps maintain the correct angle of the implement during operation, so when it's actually in the ground. When all these points are connected, the implement becomes an extension of the tractor rather than just something that's simply being pulled behind it. Hydraulic systems allow the operator to lift or lower the implement from the driver's seat. This means that a farmer can quickly adjust equipment when moving between fields, turning at the ends of rows, or changing working depths. One of the most important features of this was the draft control. So the draft control automatically sensed resistance from the soil. If a plough encountered harder ground, the hydraulic system would simply raise the implement a small bit out of the ground until traction was maintained or improved, and then it would gradually lower it back into the ground. Now today, on all modern tractors, that sensing is done through various degree of sensors, computers, everything that measures the from a strain gauge on the lower links, strain gauge sensors on the lower links, lower link sensing. Some have top link sensing, and then through measurement of wheel slip, things like that, forward speed, wheel slip percentage, it will work out a balance between the two, and it'll slightly raise or slightly lower the implement. You always want to maintain a certain degree of wheel slip. When you're, say, ploughing, for instance, you always want to maintain a degree of 4 or 5% of wheel slip, and that is for safety. That's for safety aspect, because all ploughs inherently have a rating. So if you got a 300 or 400 horsepower tractor onto a plough that was rated at 160 horsepower, there's a reason behind that. It will break it. There'll be very little give. If the plough hits something hard, that tractor will just keep going. So if you have a tractor that's 140, 150 horsepower pulling that implement that's rated at 160 horsepower with a slight, percentage of wheel slip, if it hits something, it will slow it down immediately, it'll raise it, and will carry on with work, preventing any damage, or unnecessary wear to that machine. So looking at draft controls, the draft control will automatically sense resistance from the soil. If a plough encountered harder ground, the hydraulic system would slightly raise it. If resistance decreased, the implement could lower it again to maintain consistent performance. This improved fuel efficiency, reduced wear on equipment, and helped farmers achieve a more uniform result. So looking then into the partnership with Ford. So while an invention is only useful if people adopt it, and Harry Ferguson found an important partner in automobile pioneer Henry Ford. In 1938, Ferguson and Ford reached an agreement that would help bring the Ferguson system to a much larger audience. The result, of course, was the Ford Ferguson 9N tractor introduced in 1939. And of course, I do have a video on Henry Ford as well, if you want to pop back and have a look through the back catalogue. There's a full video there on Henry Ford himself, and an interesting and strange character he was. This tractor combined Ford's manufacturing capabilities with Ferguson's innovative hitch and hydraulic system. The 9N quickly became popular because it was easier and safer to operate than many competing tractors. Farmers appreciated its versatility and efficiency, and demand grew rapidly. The impact of the Ferguson system cannot be overstated. For one thing, it dramatically improved safety by transferring weight and forces more effectively. The system reduced the risk of dangerous tractor overturns. It also improved productivity. Farmers could work more land in less time with greater precision. The ability to quickly attach and detach implements increased flexibility on the farm. A single tractor could perform many different tasks by switching between ploughs, cultivators, mowers, seeders, and other implements. This reduced the need for multiple specialised machines and lowered costs for farmers. The system also improved soil management because the equipment could maintain a more consistent depth in operation, and of course it meant that machine pulling that implement was of a smaller size, and smaller size and less weight, of course. As a result, crop production became more efficient and predictable. So one of the greatest signs of Ferguson's success is that the 3-point hitch or the 3-point linkage remains the global standard today. Modern tractors from nearly every single manufacturer still use versions of the same basic design. While materials, of course, hydraulics and electronics has advanced significantly, the core principles developed by Ferguson remain unchanged. That's a remarkable achievement, of course. Many inventions became obsolete within a few decades, but Ferguson's design continues to be used almost a century later. His work demonstrates how a well-designed engineering solution can stand the test of time. So Harry Ferguson, of course, saw a problem that many people accepted as normal. Rather than working around it, he developed an entirely new approach. The Ferguson system transformed tractors from simple pulling machines into integrated farming tools capable of greater safety, efficiency, and control. By introducing the 3-point hitch and hydraulic draft control, Ferguson helped modernize agriculture and improve productivity for farmers around the world. Today, of course, millions of tractors continue to use principles based on the original invention, making Harry Ferguson one of the most influential figures in agricultural engineering history. And of course, to go along with the Ferguson system, as it was called, other than the 3-point linkage, the system, there was a suite of implements built in there. There's a list the length of your arm that you could talk about. I'll name out a few of the most common ones here. But there was, of course, a suite of implements to go along with the system. So if you bought your T20, obviously you bought your little Ferguson plough to go along with it, and your planter and bits and pieces that went along with it that suited the system. When people hear about the Ferguson system, they often focus on the tractor and the 3-point hitch, but Harry Ferguson's vision, it went much further than that. Ferguson believed that a tractor could only reach its full potential if it worked alongside implements specifically designed to take advantage of the new hitch and hydraulic system controls. Instead of selling just a tractor, Ferguson promoted an entire farming package. Farmers could purchase a range of implements that attached directly to the tractor and worked as part of a single integrated system. This was revolutionary because most manufacturers at the time treated tractors and implements completely separate products. Ferguson wanted them engineered together. As a result, Ferguson engineers developed a wide variety of implements that could be connected to the 3-point hitch. Obviously, the first one to talk about is the famous plough, the Ferguson plough. So obviously, ploughing is one of the oldest and most important farming tasks. The Ferguson plough worked perfectly with the hydraulic draft control system. If the plough encountered hard soil, the hydraulic system automatically adjusted the depth. This reduced strain on both the tractor and the operator. The result was smoother operation, improved fuel efficiency, and more consistent soil preparation. The cultivators, of course, another important implement. Cultivators were used obviously to loosen soil and remove weeds between rows of crops. Because they were mounted directly to the tractor, Ferguson cultivators provide better visibility and control than many other pull-behind designs. Farmers could work more accurately and avoid damaging valuable crops. Of course, you had the disc harrow, the Ferguson seed drill, which obviously was a draft implement to help farmers plant crops more accurately. Ferguson introduced seed drills. These machines place seeds at a consistent depth and spacing, improving germination and helping crops grow more uniformly. Accurate planting meant that farmers could make better use of their land and often achieve higher yields. And with the Ferguson seed drill as a draft implement that it just pulled, it could be attached to what was called the pressure system, pressure control system. And the pressure control system used a special mount on the back of the tractor in a 3-point linkage that a draft implement could attach to. And it had a way of transferring weight to the back wheels of the tractor, putting weight back down onto it. I'll speak more about the pressure control system in the future, but it was a very, very ingenious way of aiding traction in draft implements. Obviously, then you had Ferguson mowers, you had trailers and transport equipment, ridgers and potato equipment, post hole diggers, utility implements, and these were all important because it was part of Ferguson's approach. And it wasn't just any single implement. It was the fact that they all were implements that were designed to work together with the tractor's hydraulic system and the 3-point hitch. Farmers no longer needed separate machines for every task. A single Ferguson tractor could plough, cultivate, seed, mow, transport materials, and perform dozens of other tasks. This reduced cost, improved efficiency, and made mechanised farming accessible to many smaller farmers. And of course, that's it for today. So obviously, everybody here, I'm sure, that has ever driven a tractor has in some way used the Ferguson system. Now, it might be a 3-point linkage on an International, it might be a 3-point linkage on a Ford, on a John Deere, on, of course, a Massey Ferguson. And, we all take it for granted. Let's, us that are of anyone from the 60s or 70s onwards, we take it for granted. The men that might, appreciate a little bit more are the men that used horses back in the day, or had draft implements, or walk behind a horse holding on to a plough. They probably appreciate the 3-point linkage more than we do, because we just take it for granted. It's always been there. It's always been used. So that's it. So please, if you like the video, drop a comment in the comment section. Tell me what you think about Harry Ferguson, about Henry Ford, about the Ferguson system. What tractor out there implements the system best today? I know they all have great systems with electronic control, and a lot of them across the manufacturing range use the same basic, control modules. A lot of them use the Bosch or different control modules within different tractors. There's not a lot to choose from between them. So that's it. Drop a comment in the comment section. I know Massey Ferguson probably were the first, and they were the first in the 80s with electronic controls for the hydraulics, with the 3090s and that, the 3075s. I'm not a Massey expert. Someone will help me out in the comments here. Anyway, that's it. If you got to the end, thanks a million for watching, and I will be back next week with another video, and I will be back with a part 2 of this video where I'm out looking at tractors and looking at the components and how they work, how they operate, and their distinct advantages. Thanks for watching. See you all next week.